And when I walked into that courtroom 6 months later, my children's faces went white as sheets. They saw me on the witness stand, very much alive, very much ready to tell the truth. And I brought every single receipt. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Richard Walker. I'm 65 years old, and for 42 years, I built Walker Construction from the ground up in Houston, Texas. My late wife, Margaret, and I raised 3 children in a house I built with my own hands. When Margaret died from cancer 3 years ago, those kids promised they'd take care of me. They said I'd never be alone. I believed them. It started small. Thomas, my oldest, began visiting more often. At first, I thought he missed his mother. He'd sit in her favorite chair and ask about the business, about my will, about my plans for retirement. I told him the same thing every time. The house was paid off, I had a comfortable retirement fund, and everything would be split equally among the 3 of them when I was gone. But Dad, he'd say, leaning forward with that concerned look, what if something happens to you? What if you get sick and can't make decisions? I'd brush him off. I was healthy. I walked 3 miles every morning. My doctor said I had the blood pressure of a man 20 years younger. But Thomas kept pushing. Then Elizabeth started calling more frequently. Then Jennifer. The 3 of them took me to dinner one Tuesday evening at this fancy steakhouse downtown. I should have known something was wrong. We never went to places like that. But I was happy. All my children, together, wanting to spend time with their old man. Dad, Elizabeth said, cutting her steak with surgical precision. She'd always been the organized one. We've been talking, and we're worried about you. That big house? All those stairs. You're getting older. I'm 65, not 95, I said, laughing. But nobody laughed with me. Thomas cleared his throat. What Liz is trying to say is, we think it's time to consider your options. There's a beautiful assisted living facility in West Houston. We went to look at it last week. I put down my fork. Assisted living? I don't need assisted living. I can take care of myself just fine. For now, Jennifer added, her voice soft. She'd always been the peacemaker. But Dad, what if you fall? What if something happens and you're all alone in that house? They had brochures. Glossy brochures with photos of smiling elderly people playing cards and doing yoga. I looked at my children, at their concerned faces, and something in my chest tightened. They seemed so sincere. Just think about it, Thomas said. That's all we're asking. I thought about it for 3 weeks, and the more I thought, the more I wondered if maybe they were right. The house was big. Sometimes the silence was deafening. Maybe it would be nice to have people around, activities, someone to check on me. That was my first mistake, thinking they actually cared. The second mistake came when Thomas brought over the papers. Just some documents, he said, spreading them across my kitchen table. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, just standard stuff in case something happens. Everyone your age should have these. I trusted him. He was my son. I signed where he told me to sign. I didn't read every page. There were so many, and the print was so small, and Thomas kept saying, "This one's just a formality, Dad. This one's just for medical decisions." I signed them all. 2 days later, Thomas showed up at my door with a moving truck and 2 workers I'd never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping out onto my porch. It was a Thursday morning. I'd just finished my coffee. "We found you a spot at the facility, Dad." They had an opening. "We need to move fast before someone else takes it." "Wait, I never said I was definitely going. I said I'd think about it." Thomas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You signed the papers, Dad. You gave me power of attorney. I'm making the decision for you. It's what's best." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean? What's best? This is my house. I built this house. I'm not leaving." "Dad, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Elizabeth appeared from behind the truck. Jennifer, too. All 3 of my children, united, standing in front of my own home like strangers. "You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking. "This is my property." Thomas pulled out a folded document from his jacket. "Actually, Dad, as of 3 days ago, the house is in my name. You signed the transfer papers. You also signed over the business assets to be divided among the 3 of us. You gave us permission to make health care and living decisions on your behalf. I felt the world tilt. What? No, I didn't sign anything like that. I signed medical papers, just in case of emergency. You signed what we put in front of you, Elizabeth said coldly. We had it witnessed. It's all legal. I looked at Jennifer. Sweet Jenny, who used to climb into my lap when she was scared of thunderstorms. Jenny, please, tell me this isn't happening. She couldn't meet my eyes. Dad, we're doing this for your own good. You'll be safe at the facility. You'll have friends. You'll be taken care of. I don't want to be taken care of. I want my home. But the workers were already moving past me, into the house I built, carrying out boxes they'd apparently packed without me knowing. I tried to stop them, but Thomas grabbed my arm. Don't make a scene, Dad. The neighbors are watching. I yanked my arm free. You're stealing from me. You're stealing my life. We're protecting you from yourself, Elizabeth said. What if you'd fallen and couldn't call for help? What if you'd gotten confused and left the stove on? We're being responsible. They took everything. They loaded my furniture, my clothes, Margaret's things, into that truck. They gave me one suitcase for 65 years of life. The facility was called Golden Years Manor. It wasn't golden. It wasn't a manor. It was a warehouse for forgotten people. And the moment we pulled up, I knew I'd been betrayed. This isn't what was in the brochures, I said, staring at the gray building with barred windows. The other place was full, Thomas said. This is temporary, until a spot opens up. He was lying. I could see it in his face. They checked me in like I was luggage. A woman at the front desk took my information, took my suitcase, gave me a room number. Room 127, second floor. A space barely bigger than a prison cell with 2 beds. A roommate who didn't speak, and a window that looked out at a parking lot. We'll visit soon, Jennifer said. But she was already backing toward the door. They left me there. My own children left me in that place and drove away in their cars. Cars I'd helped them buy. In my mind, I kept replaying every moment I'd held them as babies. Every baseball game, every school play, every time I'd worked 16-hour days so they could have new shoes, go to good schools, have the life Margaret and I never had. And this was my payment. The first night, I didn't sleep. My roommate, an old man named George, snored like a freight train. The mattress was thin. The pillow smelled like disinfectant. Through the walls, I could hear someone crying. In the morning, a nurse brought medication. Time for your pills, Mr. Walker. I don't take any pills, I said. I'm healthy. She frowned at her clipboard. Says here you're on anti-anxiety medication and blood pressure medication. I don't have anxiety, and my blood pressure is perfect. My doctor can confirm. Your son submitted your medical paperwork. These are your prescriptions. She held out a small cup with 3 pills. I refused to take them. She marked something on her chart and left. An hour later, a different nurse came. Then, a doctor. They all said the same thing. I had to take the medication. It was part of my treatment plan. Treatment plan for what? I'm not sick. But nobody listened. In their eyes, I was just another confused old man who didn't know what was good for him. I tried calling my children. They'd taken my cell phone, but there was a payphone in the common room. Thomas didn't answer. Elizabeth sent me to voicemail. Jennifer answered once. Jenny, please, I begged. Come get me. This place is awful. I don't belong here. Dad, you need to give it time. You'll adjust. I don't want to adjust. I want to go home. The house is being sold, Dad. It's already listed. We need the money to pay for your care. My heart stopped. Sold? That's my home. That's where your mother and I raised you. You can't sell it. We can, and we are. You gave us permission, remember? Look, I have to go. I'll try to visit next week. She hung up. She never visited. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of being treated like I was senile, of being given medication I didn't need, of eating terrible food, of sitting in a room that smelled like defeat. I watched the other residents shuffle around in slippers, blank-eyed, medicated into compliance. I wasn't going to become that. I started planning my escape. It sounds dramatic, I know. Escape. But that's what it was. I was being held against my will, drugged, stripped of everything I'd worked for. If I stayed, I'd die there. Not physically, maybe, but everything that made me Richard Walker would disappear. I stopped taking the pills. I'd tuck them under my tongue and spit them out later. After a week, my head cleared. I could think again. I started paying attention to the staff schedules, to when the front door was least monitored. On a Tuesday morning, during breakfast, when most of the staff was helping residents in the dining hall, I walked out the front door. Nobody stopped me. I just walked out, in the clothes on my back, with $17 in my pocket that I'd found in the cushions of a common room couch. I was free, but I was also homeless. Houston in September is hot, brutal hot. I walked for hours, not knowing where to go. I couldn't go to my house. Thomas had probably already sold it. I couldn't go to any of my children. I had no friends to speak of. I'd been so focused on work and family that I'd let those relationships fade. I ended up at a bus stop, sitting on a bench, watching people go about their lives. Nobody looked at me. When you're old and disheveled, you become invisible. That night, I slept behind a gas station. The next day, I walked to a public library and used their computer. I Googled my address. The listing was live. Beautiful custom-built home in West Houston. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, priced to sell. They were selling it for half what it was worth. They wanted it gone fast. I felt something break inside me. Not just anger. Something deeper. The part of me that had believed family was everything. That blood meant something. That your children would honor you the way you'd honored your parents. That part died right there in the Houston Public Library. But something else was born. A determination. A clarity. If my children thought they could erase me, discard me like I was nothing, they were wrong. I needed help. I needed someone who would believe me. I thought about my old business, my employees, my contacts. Most were retired or had moved on. But there was one name that kept coming back to me. Marcus Chen. Marcus and I had worked together 30 years ago on a downtown office building project. He'd been a young architect then, fresh out of school. Brilliant, but rough around the edges. I'd taken him under my wing, taught him how to navigate construction politics, how to talk to clients. We'd stayed in touch over the years, Christmas cards, occasional lunches, though I hadn't seen him since Margaret's funeral. I found his office address online. Chen and Associates, a law firm. Marcus had gone back to school, become a real estate attorney. His office was in Midtown, a sleek glass building that made me acutely aware of how I looked. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled, probably smelling like the streets. The receptionist eyed me suspiciously. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Marcus Chen." "Tell him Richard Walker is here." "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll see me. Please, just tell him." She made a call, her eyes never leaving me, probably ready to call security. But a moment later, she hung up, surprised. "He says to send you up, 14th floor." Marcus's office had a view of downtown. He stood when I walked in, and I saw the shock on his face. I must have looked like hell. "Richard? My God, what happened to you?" And I told him everything. The papers, the house, the facility. I told him about the medication, the escape, sleeping behind a gas station. I watched his expression change from concern to anger. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Richard, what your children did is called undue influence and elder abuse. The papers you signed, if you weren't fully aware of what you were signing, if they misrepresented the contents, that's fraud. Can we prove it? We can try. But I need you to be honest with me. Were you mentally competent when you signed those papers?" "I was fine. I am fine. They made it sound like routine paperwork. Power of attorney for medical emergencies, not to steal everything I own." Marcus nodded slowly. "Here's what we're going to do. First, you're not sleeping on the streets. I have a guest room. You're staying with me until we sort this out. Second, we're going to request copies of all the documents you signed. Third, we're going to fight this." I felt tears in my eyes for the first time since Margaret died. "Marcus, I can't pay you. They took everything. You helped me when I was nobody. You believed in me when no one else did. Consider this returned favor. Besides," he smiled grimly, "if we win, We'll recover attorney fees from them. Living with Marcus and his wife Julie was like being human again. They gave me clean clothes, good food, respect. Julie, a social worker, was horrified by my story. She helped me document everything, writing down dates, times, conversations. Marcus worked fast. Within 2 weeks, he'd filed an emergency petition to contest the power of attorney and property transfer. He argued that I'd been deceived about the nature of the documents, that my children had exploited their position of trust. Thomas, Elizabeth, and Jennifer hired their own lawyer, an expensive one. They claimed I was mentally unfit, that I'd been making poor decisions, that they'd acted in my best interest. The court ordered a psychiatric evaluation. I was nervous. What if they found something wrong with me? What if my children had been right? Dr. Patricia Morrison was thorough. She spent 3 hours with me, asking questions, giving me tests, talking about my life. At the end, she looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Walker, there is absolutely nothing wrong with your mental capacity. You're sharp as a tack. In fact, you tested better than most people your age. Someone did a number on you, but it wasn't dementia or incompetence. I could have kissed her. The preliminary hearing was set for November. In the meantime, Marcus filed for an emergency injunction to stop the sale of my house. We got it. Barely. The house came off the market the day before closing. My children were furious. Thomas called Marcus's office, screaming. Elizabeth sent a letter through their attorney, accusing me of being vindictive and ungrateful. Jennifer sent me a text. Dad, why are you doing this? We were trying to help you. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say to people who'd look you in the eye and call theft help. While we waited for the court date, Marcus uncovered something interesting. He pulled financial records, bank statements, phone logs. Thomas had been planning this for over a year. There were emails between the three of them, discussing the old man, how to handle me, when to make their move. They were waiting for you to be vulnerable, Marcus explained. They knew after your wife died you'd be isolated, easier to manipulate. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, premeditated, that somehow made it worse. Marcus also found something else. My children hadn't just taken my house. They'd liquidated my retirement accounts, closed out my business holdings, drained everything. Thomas had already bought a new boat. Elizabeth had paid off her credit cards, $30,000 worth. Jennifer had made a down payment on a vacation condo in Florida. They'd spent my life's work in 3 months. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Marcus's living room, looking at old photos on my phone, photos I'd recovered from a cloud backup. Pictures of my kids when they were young, Thomas's first day of school, Elizabeth's graduation, Jenny's wedding. Where had I gone wrong? What had I done to make them think this was acceptable? Marcus found me there at 2 a.m, second-guessing yourself, wondering if I was a bad father, if I deserved this somehow. He sat down next to me. Richard, I've known you for 30 years. You were a good father. You worked hard. You provided. You loved them. What they did, that's not on you. That's on them. The courthouse was packed when we arrived. My children were already there, dressed in expensive suits, looking confident. Thomas actually smiled at me, like this was all a game he'd already won. Judge Michelle Brennan was 50-ish. No nonsense, with a reputation for not tolerating bull. Both sides presented their cases. Their lawyer painted me as a confused old man who'd made the right decision to transfer assets to his children but was now having buyer's remorse after the fact. Then it was our turn. Marcus presented Dr. Morrison's evaluation. He presented the timeline of events, how quickly everything happened after I signed the papers. He presented the emails between my children. He presented their spending records. Your Honor, Marcus said, this is textbook elder financial abuse. Mr. Walker's children systematically deceived him, isolated him, and stripped him of his autonomy and assets. They didn't act in his best interest. They acted in their own. The judge looked at my children. I've reviewed the evidence. I'd like to hear from Mr. Walker directly. I stood up. My hands were shaking. I looked at Thomas, Elizabeth, Jennifer. They wouldn't meet my eyes. Your Honor, I loved my children. I worked 2 jobs to put them through college. I gave them everything I could. After my wife died, they seemed so concerned about me. I thought that was love. I thought that was care. But they weren't worried about me falling down the stairs or leaving the stove on. They were worried I might spend my money on myself. They were worried they wouldn't get their inheritance fast enough. My voice cracked. I signed those papers because I trusted them, because they were my children, and you're supposed to be able to trust your children. But they used that trust as a weapon. They took everything, my home, my dignity, my freedom. They threw me in a facility and walked away. And when I escaped, when I tried to fight back, they called me vindictive. I looked at them directly now. I don't know who you are anymore, but you're not the children I raised. Those children knew right from wrong. Those children had honor. The courtroom was silent. Judge Brennan didn't take long to deliberate. I'm issuing an immediate ruling. The power of attorney is revoked. The property transfer is declared fraudulent and is hereby reversed. All assets taken from Mr. Walker are to be returned within 30 days. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges of elder abuse and fraud. She looked at my children. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Thomas stood up, his face red. This is ridiculous. He's our father. We were trying to help him. Sit down, Mr. Walker, the judge snapped. You're in enough trouble without adding contempt of court. It was over. I'd won. The aftermath was messy. My children appealed, of course. They lost. The DA did file charges. Thomas and Elizabeth were convicted of financial elder abuse and sentenced to probation, community service, and ordered to repay everything plus damages. Jennifer took a plea deal, admitting she'd gone along with her siblings, but expressing remorse. I never spoke to them again. People thought I was cruel for that. They're your children, they'd say. Family is family. But family isn't blood. Family is trust, respect, love. My children lost the right to call themselves my family when they chose money over me. I got my house back. It felt empty now, full of ghosts. I sold it, on my own terms, for its full value. I didn't need that much space anymore. Marcus and Julie invited me to stay permanently, but I didn't want to impose. Instead, I found a small condo near downtown. 2 bedrooms, a balcony, close to everything. I also found something else. Someone else. Helen Reyes worked at the coffee shop I started going to every morning. She was 62, widowed for 5 years, with laugh lines around her eyes and a directness I appreciated. You always look so serious, she said one day, sliding my coffee across the counter. Like you're carrying the weight of the world. Maybe I am, I said. Maybe you should put it down for a while. See what happens. We talked. One conversation led to another. Coffee led to dinner. Dinner led to walks along the bayou, to concerts in the park, to lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper together. Helen had her own story of loss and betrayal. Her children lived across the country and rarely called. She'd made peace with it, she said. You can't force people to love you the way you love them. 6 months after the trial, Helen moved into my condo. We didn't get married. Neither of us saw the point at our age. But we built something together. A life. A partnership. A family of choice. Marcus and Julie became like children to me. Real children. The kind who call just to check in. Who show up when you need help moving furniture. Who care about you as a person, not a bank account. I even went back to work, part-time. A small construction company needed a consultant. Someone with experience. It felt good to be useful again. To build things. To see projects come together. My children never apologized. Not really. Jennifer sent a card once, saying she regretted how things turned out. But regret isn't the same as remorse. She was sorry she'd been caught, not sorry for what she'd done. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't escaped that facility. If I hadn't found Marcus. If I hadn't fought back. I'd probably still be there, over-medicated, slowly fading away, while my children spent my money and told themselves they'd done the right thing. But I did escape. I did fight. And I won. People ask me if I'm bitter. I'm not. Bitter would mean I'm still carrying their betrayal around with me, letting it poison my present. What I am is free. Free from the obligation of loving people who don't love me back. Free from the fantasy that blood automatically means family. The other day, Helen and I were having breakfast on the balcony. The sun was coming up over Houston, painting everything gold. She reached across the table and took my hand. "You know what I love about you?" she said. "You didn't let them break you. You could have given up, but you didn't." I squeezed her hand. "I had help. I had people who believed in me." "You had yourself," she corrected. "That's what they tried to take, and that's what you fought for. Yourself, your dignity, your right to exist on your own terms." She was right. That's what it had really been about. Not the money or the house. Those were just things. What my children tried to take was me, my agency, my personhood, my right to live my own life. And I got it back. Last week, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Thomas. He's having financial troubles again. His marriage is falling apart. He wanted to know if we could talk things over, maybe work something out. I told him I had nothing to say to him. He started to cry, said he was sorry, said he'd made a mistake. "You made a choice," I said. "We all live with our choices." I hung up. Helen was watching me from the kitchen doorway. "Do you feel bad?" she asked. I thought about it. No, I feel free. And I do. Every day I wake up in my little condo, with Helen beside me, with friends who care, with work I enjoy. I feel free. I'm not rich. The legal battle and restitution took a chunk of my savings. But I have enough. I have peace. I have a life I chose, not one someone forced on me. My children gambled that I'd be too weak, too confused, too broken to fight back. They gambled that society would side with them, that no one would believe a sad old man over 3 respectable middle-aged professionals. They lost that gamble. And when I walked into that courtroom and told my truth, when I saw their faces go white, when I heard the judge declare their actions fraudulent and abusive, I didn't feel triumph. I felt justice. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge. Justice. The right to be seen as a person, not a piggy bank. The right to make my own choices. The right to dignity. I'm 66 now. I have good years ahead of me. Maybe 10. Maybe 20. Maybe more. Whatever time I have left, I'll spend it with people who see me, who value me, who love me for who I am. My children taught me a valuable lesson, though I doubt they meant to. They taught me that family is a choice. You can be born into a family, but that doesn't make it one. Real family is built on respect, trust, and genuine care. I lost 3 children, but I gained a real family, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. When people hear my story, they usually ask if I ever forgive my children. The answer is complicated. I don't wish them harm. I hope they learn from what happened, that they become better people. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I can forgive them for my own peace, while still choosing never to let them hurt me again. Helen says, I'm brave. Marcus says, I'm stubborn. Julie says, I'm an inspiration. I think I'm just a man who refused to disappear quietly when it would have been convenient for everyone else. And maybe that's enough. The sun is setting now. Helen and I are going to a community theater production tonight. Tomorrow, I'm helping Marcus's firm with a pro bono case, another elderly person being financially exploited. Turns out I have some expertise in that area now. Life is good. Not perfect, but good. Real. Mine. And when I lay down at night, I sleep well. My conscience is clear. I fought for myself when no one else would. I stood up when they tried to make me sit down. I spoke up when they tried to silence me. I survived. No, more than survived. I lived. I'm living. And that's the best revenge of all.